I used to be a big reader when I was in primary school. St. Augustine was my favorite. He tells us that desire must be subordinate to God, and that the body is a temple for the spirit. In fact, I used to know confessions by heart. Now, not so much. Every day is a struggle against the gravity of temptation. My husband calls me a spiritual failure. I kind of believe him. I also believe in the ecstasy of feeling. Funny enough, I think stringent asceticism shows more similarities to fear than discipline. My own sensation is the only certainty I have. I've come to learn suppressing pleasure weakens life itself. Indulgence, sexuality, and art are affirmations of vitality. I enjoy feeling good, and I think that is okay.
So I guess while I do my lines, you can think about what you'd like to say. And I'm gonna read off. I feel like it's more organic. Okay, thank you for watching that short film or commercial. Honestly, at this point, I'm not even that sure what to call it. Also, I have notes here. This is not off the top of my head. I wanted to write this out so I didn't stumble over my words, but I still might stumble over my words. I think one of my favorite parts of watching a film is when you talk about the film after. So if you see a film in person, this is like when you talk about whether or not you liked it with the other people that you saw it with. If I watch a film alone, I still have this kind of conversational period where I'll go and I'll read my friends' reviews, I'll watch video essays about the film, and I'll read interviews or listen to interviews with the directors and the cast. So all this to say, I don't think anyone is going to be dissecting this film. So I wanted to offer the same conversational process for y'all, and I'll share my own reflection and speak a little bit about how the film was made. Before we begin, here's a brief summary of the film's origin and concept. We actually filmed this for Instagram originally, which is why it's 1080 by 1350, but I'll probably just pop up the video on the screen.
This film project was a love letter to sf1og. We didn't actually tell them that we were doing it, but I guess love letters are sometimes unexpected. The film is called Second Floor, and it's essentially a spec commercial for sf1og. The story follows two main characters, Margaret, an 18-year-old girl who was born into a nunnery, and Marge, a 60-year-old woman who lives with her husband. The plot explores Margaret and Marge's parallel experience with repression and release. sf1og's Autumn Winter 25 follows a similar ethos, celebrating self-discovery and zeitgeist. They even staged their Autumn Winter 25 collection inside of Berghain to make this theme abundantly clear. Many brands we stock design to be every day. However, sf1og designs around a concept that's intrinsically occasional, which is different than some of the other pieces we have here.
Okay, now I'll speak a little bit about how the film was made. So in total, we spent $1,857.85 to produce this film. So that includes everything. So everything from like Ubers to and from different film locations, all the way down to like how much we paid our talent and like any crew. But the crew was basically just 3 people, and this doesn't include the actors and actresses. And then our media team handled all the pre-production, the production, post-production, direction, lighting, sound design, color, everything. We did that all in-house. I think in this case, I would just count myself and Kyle, so 2 people. But I said the crew was 3 people. That's because we had Cassie do styling and makeup. We deliberately limited the amount of like external crew and equipment that we brought in, mostly because of budget. Because film is not something we've explored before, I wasn't the most comfortable like spending a lot on it. In hindsight though, I think limiting how much we spent was a mistake. I think the primary reason why films are so expensive is because of the number of people it requires to create. A friend once told me that you can make a film on a tight budget, but once you have the ability to spend more money, you definitely should. I think when I started this project, I didn't really agree. I felt like, oh, I have all the necessary skills to do all the roles myself, so like, why would I hire anyone? But after actually going through the process and filming, I realized that I was mistaken, and you definitely do need help. Now I'd like to speak a little bit about why we chose to make this film. I think in terms of how I justified this at the store level with our business is, I think we've always struggled to make media with intrinsic aesthetic value. So a lot of the time we have like conceptual value in like our brand explainers, right? When you watch it, you like learn something. But what we haven't explored very much in video at least is like really pretty looking media, or like media that makes you feel something beyond just like, oh yeah, I learned something. I think today with companies or like stores like ours that make media, it's typically advertising. And that's not to say that like advertising is intrinsically advertising can't have aesthetic value. In fact, I think a lot of advertising is really beautiful. But I think because that beauty is instrumentalized, where it's being used to like sell a product, where the main motivation is transactional, it's created a form of like subconscious aversion in the mind of the viewer for anything that like registers as remotely advertising. So in that case, I think the best solution in my head for commune media was to kind of forego advertising altogether and just make art that is standalone rather than making an ad that is disguised as art. Because no matter how beautiful the ad is, no matter how artistic it is, because it's an ad, it will be hampered by that quality. So that brings us to this film, which we called Second Floor. In order to make this truly artful, we had to like start at intent. So our intent was to create a film to submit to film festivals. And we're in the process of doing that now. Candidly, I don't expect much, but I feel like just having the intention of submitting to film festivals and going through that act kind of signifies something. Anyway, I think moving forward, I would continue this approach. I think submitting to film festivals and making films for film festivals is really interesting. And personally, I see the next frontier of advertisement as being less creating something to sell something, but more creating something to stand alone. So like patronizing good art and then letting the quality of the art you choose to patronize speak for your taste or the quality of your product. I think I'm seeing this being done with like Apple, where I know they're like producing feature-length films. You'll see like at the beginning of the credits roll, like the Apple logo or something. And I don't know, that speaks to me. Maybe like subconsciously, I see that and I'm like, yeah, Killers of a Flower Moon was a really good movie. And Apple, I saw the Apple logo at the beginning. Therefore, Apple has good taste and probably good products. I don't know.
Is it like, I guess, signaling the alignment of values?
Yeah, it's pure signal. I think like H&M does this. They'll get like Wes Anderson to make a film, and it's like really beautiful, and then you won't even realize it's an H&M film until like the end when they roll the H&M logo. But it's at the end when they roll the H&M logo where you're like, well, I just watched an ad. This sucks. I don't care about this anymore. Or at least that's how I feel. And
But they didn't patronize Wes Anderson?
They did, but it's still like the intent was to make an ad. And I think if the intent were to make a short film, let's say like H&M funded Grand Budapest Hotel, that'd be awesome. Like I would see that and be like, H&M, sick.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so candidly, I'm dissatisfied with the film. I love the fact that it is a film, but I think it could be a better film. Now, I will speak specifically about some of the learnings. So first section is visuals. This is like literally everything you see on screen. There are a handful of shots that I'm genuinely proud of. Some of them lived up to our pre-production shot direction, but in terms of any of them exceeding our expectations, I don't think that was necessarily the case. I think the majority of the film feels a little bit less composed than I would have liked and less intentional. I think I still have a lot to learn about composition. In general, my personal preference for cinematography is stuff that errs on the more subtle side. I think directors like Wes Anderson or Terrence Malick create really beautiful frames that are undeniably pleasurable, but I myself prefer images that could plausibly exist in real life. However, I think there's a clear distinction between just passively capturing real life and actively constructing a realistic yet beautiful frame. And I don't think I've succeeded in doing the latter. In particular, I think the church scenes had more potential to be visually indulgent. Maybe like this shot from Drive from 2011. But I think like looking at this still, it's so excessively aesthetic that it's almost kitsch. However, I really appreciate the intentionality that I see in this frame, and I think that's something I'd like to incorporate next time. Anyway, I think two other major visual shortcomings that stood out to me were colors/set design and lighting. Starting with the color and set design, I think in the future, I would love to hire a set designer, and I would love to spend more time on designing our backdrops to our frames. I think the frame that I showed a few minutes ago with Norm works so well because of the color palette and like the wardrobe design. I think we kind of lucked into creating a wardrobe that really worked with the environment. So if I take all the colors from this frame and I put them in a little palette, you'll see that like that warm yellow, those like deep navies and those milky white walls like really work together. And they are, like looking at them in this palette is super cohesive and pleasing. Okay, the next part of visuals that I would want to innovate a little bit is on the lighting. I spent a ton of time in pre-production thinking about the lighting, creating light plots. I even bought this light just for this shoot. I think for the next shoot, I'd love to work with a gaffer. I think I've still so much to learn about lighting. This time around, my main focus was just creating depth in the frame and also creating continuity with time of day, since we shot like across an entire like 12 hours. In the future, I would like the lighting to convey mood a little bit more and for that to be a little bit more considered. Moving to the next point of improvement, I think the plot needs a lot of work. After writing this, I think I have a deeper appreciation for screenwriters and directors for that matter. I've realized how difficult it is to translate a concept into film without losing like the nuance. So the original concept of the film felt pretty strong on paper. To give a short synopsis, the film follows an 18-year-old girl who's born into a nunnery and a 60-year-old who's wheelchair-bound and lives with her husband. They both feel trapped in repressed, monotonous lives, and they seek release by traveling to this ambiguous club location. And then immediately after, they return to their original environments, but we show that the 18-year-old girl has a bloody nose, which suggests drug use, and the 60-year-old has a bunch of hickeys, which suggests infidelity. And I think ideally the viewer was supposed to infer that the two met at the club and then shared an intimate moment and then returned to their lives. But we also wanted to add like an alternative interpretation where it was the same character but at two different ages, and then maybe the story was showing the first and last time she quote unquote escaped. But I think in practice, both ideas are lost. There are a lot of like small details that did not read very clearly, but they were critical to moving the plot forward. So for example, the hickey makeup that we applied just like doesn't really read on camera. Like it kind of looks like smudges on her neck. We used the same actress for both characters, and I don't think there was enough of a difference between the two characters for the viewer to even understand that like, okay, there are two like adjacent storylines happening. We tried to create more of a distinction by adding VFX to make the older character look even more old, but I think even there it's just not enough. Also, with the location selection, we were kind of constrained by like what locations we could access. So we actually used two different apartments for the younger girl and the older girl, but I don't even think this registers on screen. In the future, I would also like to incorporate more dialogue. We actually didn't use any recorded sound in this entire film. It was all just like recreated after. And that's cool and all, but the downside is we can't have any dialogue. And I think I underestimated how powerful even minimal dialogue can be in grounding the story. Okay, final remarks. I think for our next film, we want to make something longer and more patient. I think we want to create more character development and make it more emotionally legible. Yeah, I'm excited for the next one. In truth, I was like very nervous to put this out there because I was afraid that when people saw it, they would read this and interpret this as like the best we can do, even though I don't think anyone on our media team believes this is the best we can do. But what I've realized is that it'll make the film that we release that we are truly proud of just that much more sweet because everyone has seen all the steps it took to get there. So happy that we did this, looking forward to the next one.